All right, so this is the review for test unit 2, vertical angles, linear pairs, and parallel lines. To start off with, we have a review from unit 1, just to make sure we are all keeping everything together and remembering our stuff. So I'm going to use the graph, or not, because we're out of space. So I'm going to do it by hand this time. So PW, first I want to figure out the distance. I'm going to write down my points. I want to find the distance between the x values. So 12 minus negative 5. So that's a distance of 17. So I have 17 squared plus the distance between 3 and negative 8. 3 minus negative 8. That's 11. So 11 squared. And then we have, let me do the math here, 17 289 plus 121, which equals 410, and then the square root of that, which is 20.248. So there's your answer. I'm just going to make the pen a little bit smaller. Okay. All right, the slope of CW, that one I can't fit on the graph. C is at negative 1.6. Here's point C. W is at negative 5, negative 8. So here's W. So for slope, I wanted to do my rise and my run. So I went up 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then over 4. So I get 14 over 4, which simplifies to 7 over 2. So there's my slope. Midpoint of PC. Again, I'm going to do it by hand because we don't have space to put 12, but if you need to, if you want to, get a sheet of graph paper. Remember, just like before, you can always use graph paper. But doing it by hand, I take my y values, add them to, or x values, add them together, divide by 2. So this one I get 11 over 2, which is 5.5. Add my y values, 3 plus 6 divided by 2, which is 9 over 2. So I get 4.5. There's my midpoint of PC. For the length of CW, I knew that this length was 14, and I went over 4. 14 squared plus 4 squared, which is 196 plus 16, which is 212, and then I take the square root of that. So my answer, 14.560. I can have the decimal, or I can leave it as the square root of 212. All right, for the midpoint of PW, again, I'm going to do it by hand. Add the x values, so 12 plus negative 5, divide by 2. I get 7 over 2, which is 3.5. Then I add my y values, so 3 plus negative 8 over 2, which is negative 5 over 2, so negative 2.5. So there's my midpoint of PW, and then the slope for PC, subtract my y values. So this one's going to be y minus y over x minus x. So for y minus y, I get PC 3 minus 6, and then 12 minus negative 1. Make sure that these are from the same point. So 3 minus 6 is negative 3. 12 minus negative 1 is 13. So we get negative 3 over 13. Question 2. Point A is negative 4, negative 7. So here's point A. Point C is 1, negative 2. There's point C. C is my midpoint, so I know this here is mid. So I want to go from my end point A to my midpoint C. So I went up 5, and then over 5. So to get to my other endpoint, from C I want to go up 5 over 5. So here is point B, and that is the point 6, 3. Yes, so there's number 2. Number 3, I'm going to use this graph for. It says AB is the slope of 3/4. Point A is 1, 5. There's that point. And point B is negative 7y. What I always do is I always highlight the line, the y value that I'm looking for, or x value that I'm looking for, which is negative 7. Then I know to get from point to point, I use my slope of 3/4. I could go up 3 and over 4, but that's not going to get me any closer to my negative 7x value. So instead I have to go down 3 and left 4. Right there, I'm still not at that negative 7, so I have to do it again. Down 3, left 4. So now I'm at negative 7 as my x value, because this is the point negative 7, negative 1. So y equals negative 1. Okay, next page. Parallel, perpendicular, or neither. I'm going to look at your slopes. Again, use a graph paper if you will. Use graph paper, do it by hand, either one. I'm going to do mine by hand. So subtract my y values, over subtract my x values, I get 3/5 for xy. And then for zw, negative 6 minus negative 3, negative 3 minus 2. I get negative 3 over negative 5, which simplifies to a positive 3/5. So since these are the same, this is parallel. B, same thing. Negative 2 minus 5, 6 minus negative 2. We get negative 7 over 8. ZW, 0 minus 6, 4 minus negative 3. I get negative 6 over 7. These are neither the same nor are they opposite reciprocals, so these are neither parallel nor perpendicular. I continue with more of the same. 5 minus 2, 2 minus negative 2, and I get 3/4. Negative 2 minus 2, 3 minus 0, I get negative 4 over 3. So if I look at my two slopes, I have a positive, I have a negative. 3/4 and 4/3 are reciprocals, so these are perpendicular. Last one of this section, I'm going to do the exact same thing. 10 minus 8, 8 minus 3, gives me 2/5. My slope for ZW, 7 minus 2, negative 1 minus negative 3. I get 5 over 2. So if we're looking at these are reciprocals, but in order to be perpendicular, it needs to be opposite reciprocals. So these are neither, because they're both positive. We have 5/2 and 2/5, both positive. So that's the end for now of the of the review from Unit 1. Now we're going to look into the stuff that we're dealing with this unit. So for number 5, using the diagram at the right, identify each pair of angles as alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, same side interior, corresponding, or neither. And I'm actually going to take my neither and look at it if it's vertical or a linear pair. And I recommend you do the same. 1 and 4. Since they share a vertex, but they're not adjacent, these are vertical angles. They make the bow tie. I'll draw my bow tie in. They make the bow tie. 2 and 10. So these are on the same side of the transversal. They're both on top of the line, so these are corresponding. 4 and 9. Those are on opposite sides of the transversal, so I know this is a alternate. If I look at my two lines, they're in between the two lines, so these are alternate interior. 6 and 3, here's number 3, here's number 6. These ones are on opposite sides of the line, so they're alternate. And they're outside the lines, so this is exterior. Be careful what pair of lines you're looking at. 14 and 10. Change my colors over here. Don't want to use orange. All right. So 14 and 10. If I look at with M as my transversal, they're both on the same side of my transversal. They're both on top of it. And then they're both on the right-hand side. So these are corresponding. They're in the same position on both lines. And the last one, I'm going to change my color again to make sure we're all on the same track here. 7 and 13. Here's angle 7. Here's 13. Those are on the same side of our transversal, and they're both in between the lines. So this is our same side interior, which is also called consecutive interior. Either answer would work. For number 6, I know angle 3 is 75 degrees. So that means with angle 8, 3 and 8 are verticals, so 8 is also 75 degrees. With angle 1, since I know that y and z are parallel, then I know since 1 and 3 are corresponding angles, angle 1 is also 75 degrees. With 11, I can look at either 11 and 8 because I know those are my alternate interiors, so I know 11 is 75 degrees. I also could have used the fact that 3 and 11 are corresponding. 13, I'm going to have to use with angle 1. At angle 1 and angle 13 are same side exteriors, which is, so they're supplementary. So we subtract 75 from 180 and we get that angle 13 is 105 degrees. For angle 15, I'm going to use that angle 13 as 105 degrees because then I know since they're corresponding, angle 15 is 105 degrees. And then lastly, we get angle 6. Angle 6 is vertical from angle 1, so angle 6 is 75 degrees. And in fact, all of the black circles are going to be 75 degrees. All the other ones will be 105. Question number 7. Find x so that m and n are parallel. Well, right now we don't have any of our parallel angle pairs. However, I know that this 8x, this right here, and this angle here are vertical angles, so I know since this angle is 8x, this one also has to be 8x. And then I know that the 8x and the 60-degree angle are same side interior, which means they're supplementary, so I add them together and subtract from 180. And when I do 120 divided by 8, I get that x equals 15. And since we're just looking for x, we're done. Number 8, find x such that our lines are M and N are parallel. This time, we have alternate exterior angles, so they're congruent. So I set 120 equal to 5x minus 12. And I solve my equation using my excellent Algebra 1 skills. And I get that x equals 26.4. Number 9, these are technically our same side exteriors, but I know that 5x plus 4 is congruent to the angle crossing it because they're vertical. And 7x plus 2 is congruent to its vertical pair. And then these two angles would be supplementary, so I add them together. Combine my like terms. Sorry for keep going back and forth between things. Subtract 6. And I get that x equals 14.5. All right, so I'll go back up to number 10. I have alternate interiors. So these are congruent. 2x plus 30 equals 4x plus 9. Subtract my 2x. I get 30 equals 2x plus 9. Subtract 9. 21 equals 2x. Divide by 2. So x is 10.5. Number 11, I have same side interiors. So these are supplementary, so I add them to give me 180. By my like terms, 7x plus 5 equals 180. Subtract the 5. Divide by 7, I get x equals 25. Number 12, I have corresponding. Correspondings are congruent. So x plus 4 equals 6x minus 12. Subtract the x. Add the 12. So I get x equals 3.2. Number 13, well, I have a line here, and I have two angles, so I know these are a linear pair. Linear pair are supplementary, so I add them together to find x. And they have to equal 180 degrees. So then, combine my like terms. 12x plus 12 equals 180. Subtract the 12. Divide by 12. I get that x equals 14. And then I want to find the measure of angle ABD. ABD, that's this angle. So to figure that out, I plug it in. 8x plus 25, and I know that x is 14. Then I just do all that multiplication. 8 times 14 plus 25. And I get this is 137 degrees. Next page. Is this still recording? Hold on, what happened to my little recorder? Okay, cool. Oh. All right, so the next one. I have 6x plus 9 and 54. Looking at this angle and this angle, since they make the bow tie, these are vertical angles. So to find x, I know to set them equal to each other. So I get x equals 7.5. For number 15, using the diagram at the right, find x. Well, I have a line, and two angles made up that line, so I know this is a linear pair, which means these are supplementary, so they add up to 180, and that should be a minus 23. Right? Add our like terms. Seven x minus 9 equals 180. Add 9. And then divide by 7. And I get that x equals 27. And since I don't have to solve for a particular angle, I can just stop it there. All right, so in the diagram below, find x so that C is parallel to D. So I know I'm going to need one angle. I'm going to need an angle on C. And I'm going to need to use line D. So I look at my information I have. I know I'm going to need to use the 15x, so that means my transversal that I'm going to need to use is A. So I'm just going to ignore, I'm just going to box this out because I don't need to worry about this part down here. I only am looking at the 9x plus 24 and the 15x. So with those two, I need to figure out what's my relationship. Well, they're on opposite sides of the transversal, and they're both outside C and D, so these are alternate exterior, which means these are going to be congruent. If I set them equal to each other, I subtract my 9x to get my x's to one side. So 24 equals 6x. Divide by 6. So x equals 4. All right, 17. Given the information in the diagram below, I need to figure out which two lines are parallel. So I know I'm looking for either congruent, angles, or I'm looking for supplementary angles. Those are my two, all my parallel angle pairs are either congruent or they're supplementary. Just by looking at this picture, looking at my three angles, I know I'm looking for supplementary because I don't have any congruent angles. So I'm going to add them up and figure out which ones give me the 180. If I bring this one over, this is 85. So I'm going to add these two up first. 85 plus 95 gives me 180. So I know those are going to be my ones those are supplementary. And if I highlight the lines that we used, well, the 85 was on line A, the 95 was on line B. And they're both using our transversal of C. Since these are same side interiors and they're supplementary, we know that A is parallel to B. Sometimes I'm going to not ever use D because 75, I don't have the 105 I would need to make it a supplementary angle with 75. Page 5. Based on the diagram, I want to determine which lines are parallel, if any, and then if possible, find x. So I have to figure out first which pairs are parallel. Again, I'm looking for which angles are congruent or do I have any congruent angles? Do I have any supplementary? Just looking at the picture, I have two 140-degree angles in corresponding pieces. So that means since I have one 140 below line A, I have one 140 below line B. So I know that line A and B are parallel. So then I have to solve for x. Using some of my angle relations, I know vertical angles, the angle that's wrote in green is 140 because these two are vertical angles. And then if I look at the x and the 140, no, that's not what I wanted to use. Sorry about that one. Okay, so I know A and B are parallel. See, some of us make mistakes too. A and B are parallel, so now I'm going to look over here using line D as my transversal. I have the 30 degrees and the x. If I look at that, those are alternate exterior, so I know then that x has to be 30 degrees. And I apologize for the misinformation from the first time around. Since A and B are parallel, x is 30. In 19, it says lines A and B intersect C and D. Which of the following statements could be used to prove that A is parallel to B and C is parallel to D? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of my angle relations and figure out which pair does it that tell me is parallel. If I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, well, that tells me that A is parallel to B. So if I look at 1 and 7 being supplementary, that only uses line A, so this doesn't tell me anything. This tells me nothing. So my answer can't be A. Let's look at my next set of information. I know angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. So that tells me, since those are alternate exteriors, that tells me that A and B are parallel. Now look at 6 and 5. 6 and 5 are corresponding, but they still, since they're both using A and B, that's still telling me that A and B are parallel. So, can't be B. Now we try again with C. 1 and 6 are supplementary. Those are my same side exteriors, which isn't real. I know that angle 1, these are congruent to each other. But it's supplementary, and those are alternate or same side interiors. This is telling me that C and D are parallel. 1 and 4 are supplementary. Well, those are 1 and 4 are alternate exteriors. So if those are parallel, those would have to be congruent. So 1 and 4 doesn't tell me anything. So it can't be C. Which would mean it has to be B, or D, I mean, sorry. It has to be D, but let's make sure we can figure out why. All right, so it says that 1 is congruent to 4. Well, 1 uses line A, 4 uses line B. Our transversal is C. Since they're congruent, A and B, or 1 and 4 are alternate exteriors, so that's an accurate statement if A and B are parallel. 3 and 5 are supplementary. 3 is congruent to angle 4. 5 is congruent to its vertical angle, which means that these are same side interiors, which should be supplementary. And this tells me that C is parallel to D. My answer, in fact, is D. All right, given the following information, choose the best answer below. Again, I want to look at parallel or congruent angles, supplementary angles. So I know I cannot, so the 45 and 55 aren't congruent. I need to figure out which one, I need to figure out what's supplementary to the 135. So I'm going to subtract it from 180. All right, so the 45 and the 135 are supplementary. And since they both use line C, they don't touch line D. And they're both on A, one's on A, one's on B. I know that A and B are parallel. I know it can't be D because neither of those two angles touch line D. There's number 20. All right, page 6. I want to figure out, use the diagram at the right to figure out which lines have to be parallel. So A tells me that angle 3 plus angle 16 are 180. Well, 3 and 16 are alternate exterior, which are supposed to be congruent. So since this tells us they're supplementary, this tells us none are parallel. Doesn't tell us anything. All right, so 5 and 8. Well, using my vertical angles, I know that 5 is congruent to 2, 8 is congruent to 3, which means that this is technically using our same side interior. And since same side interior is supposed to add up to 180, this is telling me that line L is parallel to line M. For C, 10 and 11 add up to 180. Here's 10, here's 11. Well, we're using L and M this time with P as our transversal, but these are still same side interior. And since same side interior are supplementary, this is telling me that L is parallel to M. So letter D, angle 13 and 14. Well, 13 and 14 are a linear pair, but linear pairs will never tell me that two lines are parallel. This is none. All right, I'm going to come back up here and erase my diagram so that I can continue figuring out which lines have to be parallel. All right, so letter E, I have angle 6 and angle 14. Well, they're both using line L as our transversal. 14's under line P, 6 is under line N, and they're corresponding angles. And since corresponding angles are supposed to be congruent, this is telling me that N is parallel to P. So 1 and 8. All right, this says, letter F, it says 1 is congruent to 8. Well, 1 and 8 are alternate exteriors. So by alternate exterior angles, this is telling me that L is parallel to M. Because since our alternate exterior angles are congruent, L and M have to be parallel. G. Seven and 12. All right, well, 7 and 12, if I look at M as my transversal and N and P as my parallel lines, those are alternate interior angles. So since my alternate interior angles are congruent, my lines have to be parallel. So this tells me that N is parallel to P. And H, we have 9 and 14. Well, 9 and 14 are vertical angles, but vertical angles isn't one of our parallel angle pairs. This doesn't tell us anything, so no lines have to be parallel. The last one for this page, letter I. Again, I'm going to erase my diagram because I only have 4 colors and I need to color code it. Okay. 1 and 16. Well, let's see, 16 is using P and M. 1's using N and L. So we have no angle relation for this. This does not tell us anything. This is none. Last page. Constructions. We are almost done. We just have a couple constructions to get through, and then we will be done, and you will be on your way to doing this, to rocking this test. All right, so number 22, a perpendicular. This is my perpendicular off the line. So I have to put my compass on point C. I want to open this up so that my compass is below my line, and I draw my smile. The next step is to put my compass on the two spots where my arc intersected my line to make my football. I'm going to extend my line a little bit. Close a little bit. Just more than half. We're more than halfway. Draw my arc. Bring it over to my other spot where my arc intersected my line. Draw my arc. Then you guys will use your rulers to make this all nice and pretty. So there's your perpendicular line. Parallel. Our first step is to draw our line. Oops, that's not a straight line at all. Hold on. Sorry, my board is off. There's my line. So now I put my compass where my line intersected my original line, and I draw an arc. Then I move it up to my compass up to point C, and I draw an arc. Same size arc. Then I want to measure this arc. Put my compass where my arc intersects with the line I drew in. Pencil goes on the point where my arc intersected my line, and I draw the line. Moves up to where my arc intersected my original line. Draw that little arc, same little arc, and connect. And there we have our parallel line. So that is the whole video of the test unit 2 review. If you have any questions, ask your teacher. Good luck on your test. You will all do wonderfully.